Okay, one more time. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hola.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
My name is Christy, and I'm here with Fabiola R Delgado at the closing reception for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities exhibition, Legacy, Civil Rights at 60. The date is March 1st, 2024. Fabiola has agreed to take a few minutes to tell us a little of her own story, especially about how that story has related to civic action. Fabiola, do I have your permission to record our interview?
Yes, you do.
All right, thank you. So I guess I'd like to start out I know that you had a special role in this exhibition. I don't know if you want to include that in your introduction.
Sure. So my name is Fabiola R Delgado or R Delgado, depending on what accent you're using, what language, and I'm a Venezuelan curator, former human rights lawyer, Venezuelan citizen, Venezuelan immigrant, still, trying to find my place in the US and in DC. I've been in DC since 2011, and let's say, more established, or like I came back in 2014. That's when I requested political asylum. Still haven't gotten it. But yes, my role within this exhibition, I was one of the jurors, one of the co-curators for the Legacy exhibit. I was really excited to be included because of both of my lives, both the creative, the curatorial, the museum worker side of me, and the human rights, the lawyer part of me was like a perfect amalgamation. It was like I can use all of my, both sides of my brain, kind of both sides of my life to participate here.
Yes. And so you were, as one of the co-curators,
Mm-hmm.
jurors, intimately connected to the themes of the exhibition.
Yeah.
And one of them is civic action. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your earliest memories of civic action.
Wow. Wow. So I don't think it's my memory. I think it's been an implanted memory at first. In 1989, in 1990, Venezuela was going through a lot of crisis. That was the year I was born, 1990. And when my mom was pregnant with me, there was a coup, there was an attempt of, revoking the president. There was a lot of commotion. And even though she didn't live in Caracas, it reverberated across the country. And when I was 1992, when I was 2, there was another. That was una intentona. There was a whole, again, coup d'etat, Chavez. I was like early Chavez, and I was out with my mom, hanging out. I don't know, I think she was shopping or doing some errands, and people started running all around. My mom, she remembers it very clearly. I remember parts of it. I think I remember also her telling me a lot. We ran into a convenience store, or like a clothing store, and the people, started rushing in. They closed the gates. They like bajaron la Santa Maria, like I don't know, how do you call those? Yeah, like metal gates to like protect, and everybody started hiding because it was just chaos. And so I guess that's like my earliest memory of action, civic, military acts, like a lot of political and civic response to what was happening in the country. And then a very real memory of action was, then it was like, I guess, 1998, 1999, 2000. Chavez was already in power. I'm from Venezuela. I think, yes, I mentioned that. But once Chavez was in power, I was very little. He won the election in 98. I was 8 years old. Rose to power in 99. I was 9 years old. By the age of 10, I had already, been protesting or seen protests. My elementary school was really close, was in the same street as the military circle of the city, like the military, like barracks row.
Wow.
And there was a protest on that street. All these people who were against some of the politics that Chavez had implemented. He was already starting to change the name of the country, changing the constitution to like set himself, make forever power, not just like every 4 years or like twice you can be elected, but like you can be elected forever, for eternity. And the military went out and started shooting tear gas bombs. Like, I remember being in school and hearing everything. We were all, I mean, I was in the 3rd or 4th grade and choking on tear gas. And ever since then, like that next week, all of our teachers were suddenly trained to tell us children, and then everybody else, obviously, to always keep a little, in our backpacks, a little Ziploc bag with un pañito, a small towel, damped in water or in vinegar, have milk, have things to like protect ourselves from tear gas because it wasn't gonna end anytime soon. And so having that from a very early age, knowing that protest and action is important because something is unfair, is unjust, it's illegal in some places, and to have an immediate reaction of shutting you down, of hurting you, was very, very potent. And I wanted to become a human rights lawyer, like since that age. I wanted to be able to protect people and to somehow like get back to a country, or not get back to, but like, yeah, like set things straight. Like if you hurt somebody, you have to pay, or like there needs to be accountability. I didn't know those words when I was very little. I just needed to help out. And so, yeah, many years later, I did become a human rights lawyer.
Yes. Wow. What a powerful trajectory. When you were remembering these vivid scenes, how did you see everyday people responding? You talk about the teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was always very vocal. My grandparents, everybody I feel like has been very political. My grandparent, or my granddad, he worked in the oil industry. He was a obrero, working man. And he was part of a sindicato, a union. So, like, it's always been brought up in conversation, and like how we need to support each other, how you need to unionize, how you need to, work and help and solidarity. My mom, the same, she was a teacher. She eventually worked at a university and was always very attentive to, what's happening in the world, what's happening here. We need to stay always like attentive and not just sleep on by and people make laws or do things without us not knowing or without us not caring. So yeah, like that. I feel like I've always talked about politics, even if I didn't have the language. It's like it's always been part of my upbringing. My mom, teachers, neighbors. I mean, when we saw this, my mom specifically, she was very afraid. She has some health issues, so she didn't want to participate actively in protests, but I'm like, let's donate, let's give out food, let's see how else can we do this, let's organize inside, let's make pamphlets, let's give out information so people know. And same with neighbors and myself, if we see some people running, we would open the gates of our house or our residence, like let some students in, let people in because they're running away from the police or the military, which got us into trouble. Everybody who was like aiding these anti-revolutionaries or like opposition, the different names that the government would use, mahunche, I don't even remember now. But yeah, a lot of despectivos, how do you say that in English?
Like
derogatory terms. Escuálidos, that was the earliest ones. Esqualids. You like basura, trash. You could be, and still are, not just persecuted, but you can be arrested, in jail, or incarcerated without trial, tortured. So there was from the beginning, there was a lot of fear of what the consequence might be, but also the understanding that like we need to help because we cannot let this happen.
So then you come to DC, another
Yes.
place that is considered, a huge hub of political action, direct action, civil activism. What has it been like for you to be in this hub? What does that mean for you of protest and direct action?
Yeah, I I didn't know I was gonna end up in DC. I came 2011. I was an au pair. I had graduated from law school. I was working with Amnesty International back in Venezuela. I was very active. I didn't want to go fully into politics because I knew the dangers of, getting killed by somebody or getting kidnapped. And still, I lived many attempts not even attempts, full terrorist attacks in my university, my law school, the oldest law school in the country, the Universidad de Carabobo, was very active and very opposed to the regime. We would have weekly shootings, people, paramilitary, para-government officers trying to shut us down. And because of that, I thought, okay, well, I need to seek some protection. It's getting too much. Working with Amnesty and wearing the yellow color also signaled, you're like a CIA agent, which I was accused of, which I'm not. And so I came to the United States under a au pair visa, an O1, a specific visa to be basically a living nanny. And the family I matched with was in Washington, D.C. And in my imaginary of the United States, D.C. didn't really fully exist, which I think is common in a lot of people. They see D.C. as just the capital of the United States, the right. White House.
Yeah.
It's not a real city. It's just an imaginary Congress. But learning more about the city and then remembering, I was like, oh, the Smithsonian's, I love museums. Like, oh, that's right. That's where they are. It was just like, I have to go there because what if I don't? Like, I don't know where they'll send me, and I don't know if I'm going to be, within that same culture and international space, and, having all the embassies, having people from all over the world meant that I could kind of find a place for myself. Came to DC. It was quite an experience to be an au pair. That will be a different podcast probably. And I went back to Venezuela after my years ended. And it had descended into chaos even more. Everything that I thought, like, it cannot get worse, and it did. I was personally persecuted, kidnapped, un matraqueo. It's like the government and their para officers had now even more proof that I was a CIA agent. You came from the United States, you speak English, you're trying to destabilize the country. My boss, Carlos Luzberti, who was the director of Amnesty Venezuela, got shot. He survived, thank God. He was really close to the hospital, so it was fortuitous they got him into the hospital very quickly, and was able to survive because of that. So coming to DC, at first I thought, well, this is the place of, the Million, Men March, the King's Speech, like seeing all these spaces that in your imagination, it feels like so far away, so removed for someone who didn't have a visa, like who didn't have all these, I didn't come here with money. I never came to visit. It felt almost unimaginable. So it was very touching, very grand to be able to walk in the same spaces. I was here for the 50th anniversary of the Dream speech and the MLK, speech in the Washington Steps or the Lincoln Memorial Steps. Being there in person with hundreds of thousands of people at the same time, it was beautiful. And it was like, yeah, it kind of resonates with me. I also thought, well, everybody's a lawyer in DC, so I'll fit right in. I'm a lawyer too. Let's talk. All these, the OAS, the Organization of American States, like the UN Foundation. All these people are here. Like this is me. And eventually, I was like, well, the competition is really hard. I'm like, oh, I'm also a lawyer. It's harder to get a job. And part of me didn't want to fully fit in. I'm like, well, I also like the arts. I want to express these stories and I want to be able to tell stories, but not necessarily within an office space. And I didn't think it gave me the opportunity to share my personal stories and the people of Venezuela stories. Bloom Bars, which is a very small, beautiful space in Columbia Heights. That was my earlier, tap in, let's sing. I would sing songs about my country. I would, read poetry, and got to know many other people within the arts that were very, social justice oriented, that were civically advocating for justice with so many groups. And I was like, yeah, like it is possible to still seek justice and not necessarily through the route of law. Law, it's not perfect. It's made by humans, and humans are not perfect, and judges are not perfect. There's a lot of, systematical oppressions and matrix of, power and oppression at the same time. So the arts really gave way for a more free and unjudged space to share.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of art, and I don't know if you have had the chance to participate in a protest here in DC, could you paint us a picture of like a visual picture of what a memorable protest experience has been like here, and maybe in particular some of the protest art calls your attention, but whatever you can describe for us.
Yes, so most of the protests I've participated in DC have been Venezuelan oriented. I feel like one of my first ones was a single. I did not plan it. DC has a weekend a year where all the embassies open and they have music, and it's a really wonderful weekend. And the Venezuelan embassy was open. I was with a friend who's American, walking by, and I just felt this rage because I had just come to the U.S. I was in the process of applying for political asylum. I had been recently violented back in my home. A friend had passed away in a protest back home, was killed. Another neighbor, Hennessy's, was also killed by the military. She lived a block from me, and I was just literally fresh out of everything that had happened. That was February of 2024, or 2014, I mean. And yeah, that April, I came to the U.S. requesting political asylum. I went into the embassy, and it was all propaganda. It was all, Chavez. They didn't even have food or anything. And I started asking, where are the political prisoners? Where are the people who are responsible for the death of these women? And, at least 30 more students. And I started chanting on my own. People told me like I was crazy. My friend was really scared. And I just started, chanting and screaming and asking for justice. And I was kicked out of the embassy of my country. And so that was that was a lot. That was very emotional. And every other protest I've participated has been also in front of the embassy, the American organization, or the Organization of American States, the OAS, with like maybe 4 or 5 more Venezuelans that were here back then. Right now, there's so many more coming. And it's both exciting to see more of us, like another person that speaks my language, that speaks with my accent, that knows what an arepa is. But I know that it's because the situation has gotten so much worse. That, maybe 10 years ago, there were 10 Venezuelans, and we all met up in the OAS to protest and sing songs in front of the embassy and, demand justice for everybody back home. And now there's thousands of us. The number is growing of the diaspora, so it's bittersweet. So those have been my biggest, protests in DC. Even when I was a nanny for the longest time, because first undocumented, underdocumented, getting a work permit. I nannied for a while, and I would take the kids. I would take Lila and Josie, one in the stroller, one holding my hand, one, strapped to my chest sometimes when she was a tiny baby, and they would chant with me. And they would have flags. The family, they're American, they're Canadian American, and they supported everything. Jake and Rachel are lovely, and by now we're family. All lawyers too. Rachel at one point was working in the Department of Justice, actually. And she's like, yeah, like this is the perfect opportunity to teach my children about justice, and then they need to know. So they always were part of that. The parents would bring us food. There was one time where the Venezuelan embassy was taken over by an American group. I don't know if I should mention them. But yes, Code Pink, which I really enjoyed and admired back home because of their, strong position of anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and really, keeping the U.S. accountable for so many atrocities they've done. But then they took over the Venezuelan embassy, and we didn't understand why. The Venezuelan government had left, the embassy was empty, and Code Pink went in and took over. And they started, it was something about Trump, keep your hands off Venezuela. I'm like, Trump is not doing anything in Venezuela. I don't know what's happening. And the Venezuelan people were not allowed into our building. Somehow Code Pink had keys, they went in and they closed themselves. They got themselves trapped for months. They destroyed the building, they destroyed documents, identification documents, passports, art. And yeah, it was a very bizarre, very paranormal. It was so strange to be, I'm in America. Legally, I'm in Venezuela because this is Venezuelan territory. There's this legal fiction of the third space of, I forgot the name, but yeah, it's a legal fiction. You're in the embassy, that's international land. And somehow these Americans are the ones colonizing our embassy or intruding, invading our space. In the meantime, taunting us, and they took out their flag, our flag, and threw it away. And it was very painful to encounter the people that you think, that you admire, that have such great, powerful messages for so many people that are oppressed. But then when it is us, I'm like, we are the oppressed people here. And you took our place, and you took our embassy, you took down our flag and put your own. It was very hypocritical and very painful to see. And still, so many others, friends from all around Latin America, from America as well, brought us food, brought us umbrellas. It rained. It was so rainy and cold, like March, April, May. And I had a friend from the Dominican Republic who went to Costco and bought like 300 umbrellas and passed it around for all the Venezuelans outside. Rachel, Jake, he worked close by, and he brought trays of plantains, of rice and beans, like for everybody to eat. The people from Arepa Zone, Gabi, who is the owner of a Venezuelan restaurant, also came with like arepas, empanadas, like, and just passing out food to keep us going. And that is like one of the most beautiful things I like to see, is that protesting or civic action is not just it's not just yourself putting your body on the line, but also helping those that are on the line. You can be chanting, you can be passing flyers, you can be passing food, you can be there and like switch. Okay, it's 3 a.m. You take a turn, you go to sleep, and we'll stay awake, and we'll make sure that nobody goes in the space. And like, we're gonna link arms. There's so many things that you can do, and activism comes with that, with change, with an action, not just. And I mean, yes, you can also share stuff online. There's so many ways of participating, but making sure that there is an action behind it, and hopefully a consequence, impact.
And when you think about towards the future of civil rights, what comes to mind for you?
I don't know. I mean, when you study history, things only get better. It's hard to see because with the media and everything that we're bombarded, also because we have a lot more access to information, we can see day to day, live, what's happening. And a lot of horrible stuff is happening all over. A lot of great stuff is happening too, but that doesn't make the news. That's not fun to watch. That doesn't make a lot of money in advertising or sponsorships. What really makes money and what makes the gut feeling, what makes emotions really like tingle is violence, is disaster. So those things are happening. They're real. But also I feel like they're being pushed to the forefront more and more. And we often forget the really wonderful stuff that's happening and the people that are making change in their communities, in their neighborhoods, in Congress, like they're running for office, they're even in local elections, like, hey, we need a safer city. That may not be the most exciting news. So like we're gonna put, we're gonna extend the sidewalk. We're gonna put a park here. Like, oh, that doesn't, it's not exciting. It's not fun or not. I don't know. But, it's also happening. So it is painful. I'm always split between we need to be so aware of all the atrocities that are happening, but also we need to be aware and support the people that are trying to affect change, and they are doing it. Artists, activists, teachers, our neighbors, Thelma Jones, she's a good neighbor, and she organizes weekly food giveaways for our neighbors in Southwest and older, people who cannot, maybe walk to the supermarket. They don't have enough money. I was like, oh, there's free food for you. She makes lunches. Like, all of that is also happening, and is a very small scale that replicates and multiplies throughout our neighborhoods, our countries, our worlds. And so paying attention to that is important, supporting those people, learning from them, because once somebody passes on, they're too tired. If they don't have the relay, then we're going to see a stop. Like, okay, who's going to follow on the footsteps of Miss Thelma or Gabi or Jake and Rachel or Lila, who one day will grow up to maybe be, Lila and Josie are going to grow up to, I don't know, be senators or actors or whatever they want to be, but they will know what justice, or what injustice looks like and what they could potentially create.
That's connected to my final question, which is, what issues or questions do you think will shape the next generation of active citizens?
Everything. I don't think there's like one big thing, and everything is so big. Again, this reality that we have so much access right now. Kids are more informed than ever. Kids are more tapped into the realities of the world, nationally and internationally, than ever before. I know that, justice is something that's so abstract and that has been taught in a certain way. And then you see, MLK in February, and that's it. For the rest of the year, you don't talk about anything else. So I feel like kids are just incredible right now. They have like all the tools, and parents that are also, more open to have tough conversations, to have difficult topics, and talk about gender issues in school, talk about book banning, and there are people that are fighting that. My husband is fighting that. There's so many organizations really putting their money and their efforts into stopping all of these injustices. So yeah, we just need to be there or support them. We cannot all. I know that it's a lot of work, it's tiring, but we all have talents. For the longest time, I'm still a little bit afraid. Being under-documented in the United States for so many years, my lawyer would tell me, you shouldn't participate in a protest because if you get arrested, you may not get political asylum. You may be deported. And so for many years, even though I wanted to march or I wanted to participate physically, I knew I couldn't. And it was a huge fear of like, what if I do get deported? I don't know what may happen to me. Not even thinking that like, I might also get hurt. I'm like, I'm used to the tear gas. I'm good with that. But that other legal part, I was so scared. But still, I would make signs. I have a friend, Rose Jaffe, who had a studio in Northeast, and she, used the space to call on people, like, let's make posters together, I painted a huge banner, I think for like the Women's March, and so I'm like, well, maybe I cannot be there in person physically, but I'll support somehow. In a different way. I'll paint, I'll buy food, I'll send some money, get some materials, get some folks like, let's, put some information together, make a flyer so people know where to go. These are phone numbers you should have in case if something happens. Where do you, where are the bathrooms? You're going to be out there in the city. Where are the coffee houses that will let you in or the public restrooms? Like, let's make a list, and, there's always a way to participate and be active.
Yeah. As someone who worked on the co-curation of this exhibit, I guess An add-on final question would be, what are the messages that you hope people take away?
I hope that people know that there are ways of contributing to the achievement, and like I hate to use the word struggle, but yeah, like the achievement of civil rights and human rights. That it's a work in progress constantly. It's never gonna be, it's like utopia. The idea is never to get there, or like the idea of utopia is that you never get there. You can only keep forward and keep forward. So I don't see things being perfect anytime soon, but we can always get better and better. I feel like people have the power to collectively, come together and make change. Change doesn't really come from the top down. It comes from the bottom up. True word. I just said something. So having a conversation, donating to a local mutual aid group from your ward, organizing a small lecture in your, residency or in your home, hosting an artist and, hosting a concert and letting them share their stories, sharing their music, sharing their poetry. That's a way that you can, little by little, it does make a huge impact, and it makes a very direct impact. Maybe you don't impact a law, just so far away from the everyday person, but you can help this one person, and that person's life will be changed pretty much forever for you opening up and being, active in solidarity. But then also participate politically too. Like, we all have the power. It's not just like the big election. Who do we vote for president? Again, it doesn't come from the top down. It's from the bottom up. Who are your local officers? Who are your ward representatives? Who are the people that are, in your local government and your local like neighborhood organizations, ANCs, and really, go to, pay attention to what they're saying. Like, is that the person that I want to vote for? Is that a person I want to volunteer with? Should I, help people sign up to be voters? How do you register? I did that when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were running up. They needed people who spoke Spanish to sign people up that were, not English speakers. And I went to Florida and I helped sign out a bunch of people so they could vote. Not to vote for somebody, but to vote. You have this right, you have this power. And all you needed was somebody who would tell you, where is it? This is a map and I speak your language. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I'm going to tell you you can do it. And I'm going to show you how to. Still, I can't vote yet, but I'm going to help you because you have this power, and so many people just take it for granted. And coming from a place where your vote can cost you your life, your job, in my case, my mom's pension, it cost her pension. The government keeps track of who has voted for whom. There is a lista pascon, it's a list. It's pretty much public. There's an app even at this point. And the Venezuelan government keeps tabs on you. Oh, you voted for one person? Sorry, you lost your pension. My mom lost her job. My mom lost her pension now. She lost a bunch of stuff. Me, I never was able to even work in the Venezuelan government or justice system. I was told to my face, your mom voted against the president. You voted against the president in this election, in this year. And I was like, what? The first time I voted. And they already knew, and I was not allowed to work in the judicial system. So in America, things are not perfect, but there's a lot that we can still do and that we can prevent from becoming a more, a totalitarian state and a more violent place. So let's use it.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives and experiences today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope it made sense.
I'm going to stop.